Welcome to Audio Branding, the hidden gem of marketing. Sound plays a more important role in human behavior and our decision-making than you may realize. In this podcast, I'll help you understand the art and science of sound so you can better influence others in business and your life. I'm your host, Jodi Krangle. Let's delve a little deeper. I'm curious as to your thoughts on this because, of course, you know, your Mackie products are used in podcasting every day. But what do you think has changed between pre-pandemic and post-pandemic podcast-wise? And I'm not just curious about the rise of it. I'm wondering if there's been a shift in the actual tone. Like, have things changed? Are people more willing to learn the tech? Is there a different tone to the podcast themselves? I mean, clearly they're more prolific. There's a lot more of them and a lot more listeners, actually. So things are changing. They're evolving.
Yeah.
I'm curious as to your thoughts.
I mean, definitely something we observed during the pandemic, obviously, was just like a lot of people pivoting to a hobby like that because there wasn't much else to do. And
so true.
It's maybe less like specific to podcasts, but I think that just in general, people will be expected to be like content creators in their own right. I've noticed it especially with musicians where like a lot of my favorite band, like a lot of times, like these bands that I looked up to in high school, like it's like the band isn't really the money making excursion. It's like a vessel, but like they they're every day being like, what's up guys? And like, they also are in a band. Like, I think our understanding of like what makes I think that's kind of changing. Like you just have to be active. And
you need a media empire.
Yeah. And it's like, it's always like we had an up and coming musician here last week who he's being followed around by a Netflix documentary team, but like he knows that like every day he has to post something, and he was talking about starting a podcast because it's another form of content. And I think it's just like one of the easier ways to like look into your daily life and make those things interesting.
Yeah, it's interesting. I have a podcast episode with a fellow named Casey Cavalier from a band called The Wonder Years. And he and his band have been doing a ton of stuff, and he has a podcast as well. So he like reviews music.
Yeah.
I mean, it's pretty awesome. But yeah, you definitely, he was talking about this on the podcast that you need your own media empire. Content creation is everywhere. And yeah, it's part of the thing now.
It's a hustle. One of the bands that was on my iPod was The Wonder Years. So, okay.
There you go. Casey was great to talk to, and it was a really interesting conversation. Yeah, I think you'd enjoy that episode. But yeah, he, great guy. And what I love about what he talks about, and we'll get into this too, because I want to talk about, why you think sound is important in general. But I think part of what he's so concerned about is helping other musicians being able to make more music.
Yes. Which,
at its very basic is what we're hoping for. And I'm sure Mackie would appreciate that.
Yeah.
It's a slog, if people are unwilling to pay for music and how do you make the content help you create what you're creating?
Yeah.
So it's a big question.
We're in this weird day and age where like everything has like a direct market now. Everything. And so, again, it's like a band is like, does it tour 300 days a year and release an album once every 2 years and have a touring cycle or is it a subscription model thing where we're releasing singles once every few months and making t-shirts and doing our merch store. Like everything has changed just, by nature of.
You need the super fan.
And so,
yeah. I mean, that's like Spotify won't even, if you release an album on Spotify, they'll only play one of the songs from the album. So people have started they've started releasing singles, and that's it. There are no albums anymore.
Right. There's like a whole structure to like how you make a single go the furthest now. And like, it's just completely changed. And it's changed our industry. Fortunately, for us, Mackie's always been like this brand that's for people who, are doing things on their own ability, for the most part. Like, we're not like the staple of like a giant studio. It's like, it's for the individual. And so I guess that's good for us. But I mean, I just think that individuals being empowered is going to be a way these trends continue to move. And I don't know, again, about changes like tonally in podcasting, but I will say that, I mean, ultimately I think that like quality will like seed these things out, people who are really putting in true effort, whether that's on podcast or TV. Like, I don't know. I think that those things just suss themselves out.
Yeah, it's a good point. Yeah. And definitely I think that there's an interesting and delicate balance between being authentic and being offensive with how bad your video or audio is.
Right.
So, there's a delicate balance. I think Mackie probably gives people who may not have otherwise thought of having good audio, or even video. Does it work with the video portion?
We don't.
It's because it's streaming.
We only have audio products. Yeah.
Okay.
But,
I mean, certainly that makes it easier for people who maybe aren't as versed in audio tech as, lots of other people, and just still want to have a podcast. I think that's great. It's democratizing the whole thing, which
totally.
Yeah. I think that's a really good thing. So sound, I mean, obviously super important to Mackie. Why do you think it's important in general? What do you think it's accomplishing, especially now?
Just as a sense, I mean, it's one of the easiest things to attach. Like, I think it's one of the easiest things to attach like an emotion and a memory to. Like when I listen to like a podcast, like I'm listening to this, fiction fantasy podcast right now, and all of the talent is great, but like when you hear them, like the production of like, and like the musical note hits, like it could be your first time experiencing it, and you'll just be overcome, and you will like instantly understand what the person meant to convey, and that's, that's even true. I don't know if you're watching a TikTok and there's like a really well placed scream or some kind of like reaction. Like, I just think that like that there's like an immediate attachment, with sound. And like I said, it's not only just like emotional, but memories attached to it. I just think that is so distinct, and like, without getting too deep into the psychology of it, that's how I would express it.
Yeah, I totally agree. Yeah, there's a lot of power in sound, in that I always like to say it gives us emotional context.
Totally. Yeah, 100% true.
Yeah, like watching a movie, you really don't get as much out of it unless the music gives you the emotional cues of how you're supposed to feel about something.
Yeah, and I'm sure there's a lot of it, there's, there's like those videos where it's like, I took the laugh track out of a sitcom and all of a sudden it just like doesn't read as funny, And so, I think that's exactly right. That it's like it's cues for people to like understand what is meant to be conveyed.
Sure. And, I don't know about you, but I can remember jingles from like 30 years ago.
Yep.
They never go away.
No, I forget exactly which one it was. I did a jingle yesterday, and then my fiance finished it, and I like didn't even think it was one she might remember. I was like, she might be. I thought it was like maybe too regional or something, but like I forget the example, but
Oh, it happens all the time. And my husband and I are in different generations, really, when it comes like very almost like right, on that cusp. And there are some things that we both remember from our childhood and they intermingle.
Yeah. And I remember that stuff too, where my mom would sing a jingle or something. And like part of me would, I guess partly that helped me to understand things from an era I don't know. And people be like, you won't remember this. I'm like, actually I do, because my mom would sing the jingle, but also like, I was always like, oh, it's so funny. She remembers that thing from 30 years ago. And now I'm like, nope, I totally get it, Yeah.
Yeah. And the more ridiculous it is, the more memorable it is.
Yeah, like the Big Mac sauce or whatever that jingle was, it's like, yep.
Or the plop plop fizz fizz, like who doesn't know that?
Exactly. Yeah.
So, yeah, and I'm singing that in my head. You can't help it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just one of those things. Yeah. But yeah, so it's so tied with our memory that it's amazing. And I really feel that more people should pay it attention and use it because, if you're trying to make advertising memorable, that's the best way to do it.
Totally. Yeah. So, yeah, that's like just part of the science, right? Is just, getting that perfect, well placed, and just making people connect with it.
Yeah. The connection. Because I've said this before, you can get people to pay attention with video, but you can't really make them care unless there's good audio.
Yeah. And even, as a person who does this, like with video, I know that you have 6 seconds or less to make an impression. But if you can put something like captions, like words, or if you can get like, there has to be some kind of hook, right? Otherwise people will just keep scrolling, and so.
Does audio make a good hook for that?
It depends.
I guess it depends on if they have the audio
right.
on.
And that's the thing too, is like a lot of these services, for the most part, we're like defaulting to no audio playing. Right. And so that's why you'll see a lot of videos with captions, and it's like, it has to, like, if you aren't doing something right then and there, you're basically giving up at, like, why even bother, and so, it's just weird. The, how fickle we are about that stuff, I guess.
Yeah, and our attention spans are getting smaller all the time.
I mean, fortunately, I guess, there is still a market for long format podcasts, but,
or we wouldn't be doing this.
And again, I think that's just a matter of like using the content differently, and, how you want to. You use a clip for the sake of getting people to listen, and then when the people listen, they're paying attention,
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot that goes into all of this, I'm sure. Yeah. And psychology, like, we're still learning the associations between our sound, what we hear, and what it does in our brain, and then how it affects our other senses, which is really fascinating. Because I spoke with a gentleman named Steve Keller, who's the sonic strategy director over at SiriusXM. And they have an ad agency, and they dabble in sonic, but like experiences that are multi-sense experiences that are really fascinating. So he did something for a brand called Propel, where they had someone listen on in headphones, and were scrolling through an iPad, and they were tasting this Propel drink. And what they were listening to from the headphones was changing whether they were experiencing more sweet or salt in the drink.
Interesting.
So, and this is back in 2016. Yeah. So really fascinating stuff. Like there's a lot of associations in here with sound and our other senses that we're still figuring out.
Yeah.
I think there was actually a beer manufacturer that did this also with people listening to a DJ, and the taste of the beer, the bitterness was changing.
And yeah, despite nothing actually having changed, it was just their perception. Yeah. That's interesting. Yeah.
Exactly.
Huh. Yeah.
Yeah. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, that's wild.
Yeah, very wild. But moving on to more stuff to do with you and Mackie, I wanted to ask you what you're working on now, either yourself personally or Mackie.
Yeah, so, well, right now, at Mackie, we're a few months out of the launch of this DLZ, and it's still receiving regular updates. We just introduced a technology called NDI. And so we're the first pro audio manufacturer to implement that standard. And it's usually used for video protocols. The short version.
What does NDI stand for?
Networking.
If I could ask.
I think it's networking data interface. But
okay,
basically the short version is you can use the DLZ over a network. And so you could have multiple units on a network. And I mean, if I was an internet radio station and all of my DJs were remote, like during the pandemic, like I could have used this and had everyone like on this kind of same standard and had all the audio coming to the same area. So just like a more professional standard has been introduced. And we plan to keep revising, because this is a digital mixer. We have the ability to update it, even though if post purchase, and that's what's awesome, is it's going to become even more useful and powerful. And then I touched on this, but yeah, just me personally, I just wanted to get into using the product, and as much as I could have been doing it for Mackie at my job, I was like, I just think I'd have more fun doing me, for at least a little bit.
Well, there's less expectations too,
and so I'm having fun using it. And like, that's the nice thing, is just kind of removing, like that expectation. Just being, okay, I'm just going to use it and have fun. And that's been really nice to get back into that, because it's something there's a significant period of time where I stopped for a while, and now I missed, developed enough of a taste of missing it that I wanted to get back into it.
Sure. Yeah. So how would someone find you on Twitch or on the internet or wherever?
Instagram, TikTok, and Twitch, at Robbie Puzz, ROBBIE and so, I haven't totally developed my schedule yet, but I'm, trying to be more consistent as a creator there. And then also, Mackie Gear on Instagram, TikTok, and, Twitter, and then just Mackie on Facebook. But, periodically you'll see me on there, just, attempting to destroy gear. Destroying it would imply that it's broken by the time we're done throwing it down the hill. And so it still works.
You're just testing it all.
Yeah. So, you can catch me over there as well.
Okay, fantastic. Well, this has been a really interesting conversation, Rob. Thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you so much for having me, Jodi. This is wonderful.
Well, that's the end of this episode. Thanks for listening. And if you like what you heard, why not tell a friend about this podcast? It's available in all the usual locations. Until next time.